Traders, how are you? With Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. This week we have the worst sell-off in stocks since 2020. We have new studies showing that the record amount of children dying of heart failure has come from the thing in your arm from the pandemic. And we even have news about a blackout in Paris. Let's go and get started. Markets this week, we're kind of chugging along until Wednesday hit. Wednesday was the worst day for the stock market since 2020. $1.1 trillion was absolutely savagely taken from the market. Major tech stocks, the Magnificent Seven, most of them were down double digits. The only stock market that was positive was the Dow. It went up 1.47 for the week. And even the Communist Republic of Canada was up 0.57%. In some of the conspiracy news, the global surge in heart failure that started happening after the pandemic since early 2021 now has a serious confirmed study that there's a big connection between the things in your arm from the pandemic and the heart failure. I found it really interesting, for example, that Pfizer made an amazing investment in a company that offers treatments for heart failure, believe it or not. Overseas market news, the European markets were mostly mixed. Istanbul was the biggest loser there. The Latin American markets were mostly lower. The Bovespa in Brazil, which is the biggest market in Latin America, were negative 0.09%. Africa and the Middle East mostly mixed. The Nigerian market was the most negative there. And in the far east, Asia, Australia, mostly lower this week. The Nikkei in Japan was the biggest loser there as well. Bitcoin and other crypto news. Bitcoin was higher this week, 2.44%, just a touch over 68,174. Let's say the increase of this week was mostly credited to Donald Trump speaking at the Bitcoin conference, the crypto conference, talking about how the United States should be the leader in crypto. So the assumption is that if he actually wins, which there's, some news that he might, especially after the assassination last week, that there's going to be a great thing for crypto, especially since the last 4 years during the Biden administration has been quite hostile against crypto, even though now they're trying to save face. And you can see Kamala Harris kind of reaching out, quote unquote, to the crypto community. Commodities and energy, Russia suddenly exporting a lot less oil, affecting a lot of the Asian economies that were relying on the discounted oil from Russia. If you don't know what happened there, basically the whole situation with Russia and Ukraine, Russia invaded Ukraine. The entire Western alliance, United States and Europe, completely sanctioned and cut off Russia from everything. Russia, in order to survive, what they started doing is selling their oil at a discount, especially to a lot of these Asian countries, because, if they're going to defy U.S. and their sanctions, then obviously they're going to have to do it for a reason. And so Russia looks to be in a bit of trouble. Oil prices fell on Friday by over 1% in a third week negative. There's a lot of investor concerns over China. China. I love them. China's obviously not doing very well. Remember that China is still the biggest importer of oil in the world. Their importations were down 11% in 2024. Down 10.7% from last year's June to this year's June. And refined products, oil is turned into gasoline and plastic and Vaseline that you put on your face, for example. All those refined products were down 32% during the same period. So if the second largest economy in the world now is not using as much oil, that means that they could be possibly walking into a recession, or maybe already be in a recession, especially since they're still having that situation with the property values in the markets. U.S. crude went down almost 4%, 77.16, while Brent, which is international, went down 1.84% to 81.13. On Wednesday, coffee futures had the second week negative. If you guys didn't know, there's two different kinds of coffee, which is Arabica, which mostly comes from Colombia, for example, and other high quality producing countries. And then there's another kind called Robusta, which comes from places like Vietnam, Brazil as well. Brazil, for example, is the largest exporter of coffee in the world. Vietnam is number 2. Colombia is number 3. But due to the fact that the first 2 largest exporters, which is Brazil and Vietnam, have had a really big problem with disruptions due to rainfall and weather, that's caused coffee to go up quite a bit. There's going to be a further increase of prices in Europe due to the fact that in the middle of 2025, they're passing new regulations in regards to deforestation. And so that's going to cause the great socialist Republic of Europe to increase prices even more. Gold went down 0.61% to 2,387.10. Silver went down almost 5% to $28. It did touch 27 and change. Remember, I told you guys last week there was some selling pressure. I still think it can go down a little bit lower, but if I remember right, I told you guys between $25 to $27 or so. Financial and banking news, 76% of all money that comes to the federal government from personal income taxes, which is the biggest chunk of money that the government gets in the United States, went to servicing the $34 trillion in debt. It's not a good thing at all. And the problem is going to be when we start to have a lot more inflation because they just don't have enough money to pay for the debt anymore, and it's going to be a big problem. So buy your farm, start growing some food, and disconnect from the system. On Monday, China surprised the markets by lowering their key short-term interest rates and their benchmark lending rates. They had a big problem with deflation. Deflation for a government is bad because the prices go down. A government, what they want is inflation, which means prices going up, because they can charge you more taxes, especially on your income. They've had the prolonged property crisis, surging debt, and weak consumer and business sentiment, which is not bueno. U.S. home prices hit a new high in June for the second straight month. The house sales declined in June for the 4th straight month. Obviously, this is due to the prices being elevated in addition to the mortgage rates being so high. Median existing home sale price jumped to $426,900, 4.1% higher than last year. And the latest sign that the housing market remains affected by what's going on in the economy right now with inflation and the mortgage rates. Remember that the housing market in the United States is about 17 to 18% of the entire economy. So if 20% essentially the economy isn't doing well, that means the whole economy probably isn't doing well either. The spring buying season as well, where people come and generally buy a lot of homes, was flat, and that's concerning some economists as well. The U.S. inflation is slowing, but not enough for the Fed to lower interest rates next week. The Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index, say that 3 times fast, continued to slow in June of 2024. Confidence that inflation is on track towards the 2% target of the central bank. But shelter costs, which basically means rents, major contributor of the inflation, is coming down as well, which is a good thing. Political news, Biden officially ended his candidacy for the second term, endorsing Kamala Harris. In true fashion, how the Democrats do it, they don't elect somebody, they decide afterwards who they're going to put. Remember that Kamala Harris, I don't want to get too political because I always try to do these videos without a political leaning, but remember that Kamala Harris couldn't win the last nomination because Tulsi Gabbard pointed out a lot of horrifying things about her, including she held inmates in prisons past their time to be able to get released due to the fact that it was cheap labor for the California government, the California state government. In addition to that, Planned Parenthood, which are offices that does abortions, there were some journalists that reported that they were selling baby parts, like legs and things like that. And Kamala Harris decided to go after the journalists and not Planned Parenthood because obviously it's legal. Not abortion, but, selling baby parts essentially. So true communist fashion, they don't elect somebody, they choose somebody. And since nobody likes Kamala Harris because she couldn't even win in the last Democratic primary, they decided to put her in after the fact. So Communist Republic of the United States, apparently. Economic news, the finance ministry in India says that the country is going to grow at 6.5 to 7% instead of the expected 8.2% growth rate. India was one of the highlights in the economic world globally due to the fact that they have been the fastest growing economy in the world for quite some time. Germany's private sector unexpectedly contracted in July. Remember that Germany is the 3rd largest economy in the world, the largest economy in Europe. They've been having a lot of manufacturing problems in addition to growth being expected to pick up in the second half of 2024, but I think it's probably going to get worse, not better. And the euro area private sector activity barely grew this month, while the U.S. economy grew faster in quarter two at 2.8%. The number that they always take in the quarters, remember a quarter is 3 months, so whatever they grow in those 3 months, they annualize it. So when they say in quarter two was 2.8%, that means that they annualize that number, just FYI. Corporate news, CrowdStrike, which is the software company that had the glitch that made the huge software program for everybody last Friday, not last week, I should say, went down another 13%. Shares of Verizon went down 6% after they didn't hit their numbers for the quarter. UPS, their shares fell over 12%. Eating my tongue here. After they didn't hit their numbers, and remember that a company like UPS and FedEx that ship things around the world is a good indicator of commerce. So if their numbers are starting to miss quite a bit, that means that there's less packages and things going back and forth, which means that the economy isn't moving as much, which means that we're most likely walking into a recession. Spotify crushed it. They went up over 12% on Tuesday after they reported earnings. They surpassed expectations in terms of the income and also revenue. And GM, the big car maker in the United States, fell over 6% after they didn't hit their numbers. And they started to report that they're going to start delaying a lot of their electric vehicle plans. Ford Motor Company, their stock went down 18% after they didn't hit their numbers, in addition to them already saying, remember, that they're going to slow down their electrical vehicle plans as well. They're saying that their their EV business is going to lose $5 to $5.5 billion this year. And in technology, for the first time, watching TV, including streaming, 40% has surpassed people watching on streaming now above cable TV. Only 27.2% of people watch cable compared to streaming, which is now over 40%. And the first heart transplant breakthrough, as the first human 58 years old receives a titanium heart. Titanium is a metal, in case you didn't know. 58 years old, they uses maglev technology. I don't know if you guys have seen the trains in Japan, most of all. Essentially, there's like a little cubby, and then the train sits in the middle, and then they run electricity to magnets, and then it literally hovers instead of being on tracks. Super interesting. So that's the kind of technology that it uses. And Tesla went up over 5% after they went well with their earnings. Elon Musk said that they're going to start making humanoid robots in production next year. Tesla then plunged 12% on Wednesday with everybody else. Most of the big software companies and tech companies went down double digits after that huge drop on Wednesday. Their shares are still up 27% over the past 3 months, but negative 13% for 2024. Investment news, a asset management company called Invesco Global has been doing a study for 12 years where they survey 83 sovereign wealth funds. That's basically a hedge fund for a state, for a country. So 83 of those, 53 central banks, and what they do is they talk about what are the biggest things affecting their business, because obviously money for a central bank and also hedge funds for countries, they have a very well lit situation, what's going on in the world. And now saying that inflation is not the biggest problem, but now geopolitical rivalries, including U.S. and China. China. I love them. Walmart plans to potentially spend $200 million on warehouse operations to be able to automate forklifts. So even forklifts aren't going to be safe from the AI revolution. And LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, agreed to pay $6.625 million in a settlement after they reported. And there was almost a class action lawsuit against them talking about how they superinflated the numbers of people running ads on LinkedIn. International events, there's a huge fires going on in the province of Alberta. Alberta, if you didn't know, is kind of like Texas and Canada, the Grand Communist Republic of Canada. They've had to evacuate 3 communities. There's 62 hectares of wildfires, 158 wildfire events with only 55 being out of control, meaning that it's going to get worse. And Saboteur stuck France's TGV high-speed rail system right before the Olympics, causing travel chaos throughout the country. Now it was reported literally just today while I'm recording this video that there was a electrical outage in France. Remember about those outages I was telling you guys about. And interesting facts, archaeologists, there we go, unearthed a century-old tomb decorated with stunning murals portraying daily life of the Tang dynasty, the emperor that ruled Central and East China from 618 to 907 AD. Really, really interesting stuff. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.